So, good evening, maybe good morning, depending when if we've got anybody from the US. Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the Bath and Bristol Agile meetup for October. In a minute, I'll introduce you to our presenter tonight. But first of all, just a couple of pieces of just information on upcoming events. So next month we've got Dan Brown, otherwise known as Kanban Dan, giving a talk on Scrum is from Mars, Kanban is from Venus. So very interested in looking for that. December, I know we said in the last month or so that we're going to do something different. I said the Royal, we potentially may have been a little bit remiss on getting that up and running, but we're going to have a chat this week to try and move that forward and get something sorted and get it decided and get something out for what we're going to do and when in December. And in January, we've got Roman Pitchler giving us a talk as well. And again, I've got to sync with him on the exact topic, but again, really looking forward to that one.
Well, he's certainly got a really great book out quite recently, so that's really cool.
Yeah, he has got a new one out. I haven't read it yet, but I've read some of his previous ones and use a lot of stuff that he's produced before as well. So some really good stuff. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Coming back to where we are, I know Gunther touched on putting people's location, etc., in the chat. We'll add a little slant on that. I've got a mural of a global picture. And if people have a chance, I'll send out the link in the chat if people can post on that and we can have a quick look at the end and visually see where everybody's come from. And I'll also take a photograph and send that out with the video. That said, just as a warning now, I might as well say now, everybody, we are going to record this. So as soon as Gunther starts, he's going to press the record button. So if you don't want people to see you, then feel free to turn your video off, but it's always nice to see people. So without further ado, coming to this, Gunther Verheyen, globally renowned, highly respected by myself and many others, in calling himself the independent Scrum Caretaker, which gives you a view to his mindset, which is why he probably gets so much respect on this. He's going to share what drives him in this mission, and basically, if you don't know, Gunther also has, and again, this isn't a sales pitch. It's one of Gunther's books, the Scrum Smart Travel Companion, which I've got even here, which I've read, really useful. And another new book, I don't know whether you're going to mention, but I am, Gunther. It's 97 Things a Scrum Practitioner Should Know. I've read a couple of excerpts, and I'm going to be getting myself a copy shortly. So I'm really interested and looking forward to that. The bits I've read are really informative, really interesting. So on that note, I will pass you over to Gunther and put you in his capable hands.
Okay, thanks very much, Stuart, and also for promoting the book. So thanks for that. So in the meantime, I'm also going to keep an eye on the waiting room because there's no option to co-host. So and Stuart had to make me the host in order so I can present. So thanks for introducing my books, Stuart. Two of the things that I'm quite proud of in a way. By accident, I think writing the first book turning into some sort of success, and then the second book trying to work with people across the world to get them to contribute articles. And then I realized like 97, that's really a lot. It's good that I didn't think about it beforehand. So that was really good. I liked it. So, okay. So welcome everybody. And like Stuart indeed says, I call myself indeed an independent Scrum Caretaker nowadays. I'll try explaining a little bit why and how and so on. So here's my little screen. So have a look. And indeed, like Stuart said, and I would like to share what it means, at least for me, to what I call to humanize the workplace. And obviously with Scrum, because anything I do is sort of with Scrum. You might see that as a limitation. I actually don't, because of the openness of the Scrum framework. I can limit myself to Scrum and still have tons and tons and tons of opportunities to sort of do it differently. So at the same time, it's a limitation, but again, it's sort of not. So let me share a little personal thing, if you're okay with that. This is like Stuart just said, my home office. I have this little box. It's a little box. It's about 5 centimeters, a couple of inches big. It's hanging on the wall in my office, and I bought it because I like the quote that is on there, because it reflects a lot of things about life for me. And I think, I don't know whether you recognize this in our beautiful world of Agile and Scrum. Um, People that are like waiting, sitting around for things to happen, sitting around waiting for, let's say, often management to sort of what they call get it. Those things like it's not really the idea. Do something. Try to do something, and that's what's for me in that quote. Now, like Stuart just said, I call myself a Scrum Caretaker. That is not something that I always called myself. I wasn't sort of born like calling myself, I'm going to be an independent Scrum Caretaker. I started using the term back in 2016 when I left Scrum Talk and decided to be on my own 2 feet. So I had been working at Scrum Talk with Scrum Talk and with Ken Schwever by then for 3 years, from 2013 until 2016. And then I decided to go on an even more independent base, let's say. And I had to think about a title for myself because that's what LinkedIn wants you to do and so on. And then just intuitively, I came up with Scrum Caretaker. I've not too long ago recently started adding that thing, that journey of humanizing the workplace, because I feel those 2 aspects, first of all, are connected, and I feel they also represent who I am, what I do, and the way how I feel. And the idea about the caretaker part is not just caring about Scrum, but just calling myself caretaker also reflects that I care about people and how Scrum is being implemented for people and how people feel in terms of Scrum. Now, sort of inspired by the fact that Scrum is, I think in a couple of days, celebrating its 25th birthday. So Scrum will be 25 years old now. And despite the fact that we have achieved a lot, really, really a lot, I still feel there's so much more we can do. And one of those aspects is that what I call the people aspect of Scrum. The first, let's say, 20, 25 years of Scrum has been focused a lot on product development, creating better products, building more excellent products. Really important. We have done a lot. But I feel like this sort of humanizing the workplace, where it's not just about product development, but in a sense also about people development. And I think that's really important. And the aspect is missing a lot. And certainly in a lot of whatever people would call an agile transformation, what I miss in a lot of those so-called transformation is what I've tried to put over here. First of all, it starts and ends again with people. And for me, people are what I call naturally agile, meaning people have the natural ability to adapt, to absorb, respond, whatever, cause changes, respond to changes, and so on. So people are naturally agile. And then you've got all these great agile transformations with people coming to tell us that we now should be agile. Where I'm like, yeah, you know what? People are naturally agile. It's rather a matter of taking away what impedes us to show that agility in the workplace. Because in our personal lives, we're all agile. We adapt, we change, we get new insights. We don't plan our life like 3 years ahead in every possible and impossible detail. So we just respond to what happens. We cause things to happen. We are naturally agile. And what is for me very important is also whatever process or framework, whatever it is you want to use, whatever you want to call it also, it should build on that natural ability of people to act with agility. So people are naturally agile, and whatever process you do should follow that ability. It should build on that ability. And for me, this sounds silly, I don't like the expression, but Scrum implemented properly, I don't like the properly idea, but Scrum implemented well is a process that does exactly that. And then even beyond that, all structures and the organization, let's say around Scrum, again, should build on Scrum in the sense that Scrum builds on that ability of people to act with agility. And I miss that a lot. I miss that focus. I miss those beliefs also in a lot of organizational transformations and even certainly in agile transformations. So that, but again, people are naturally agile. Let's look into that a little bit more and tie it back to Scrum, because I'm saying that Scrum is a process that for me builds on that ability of people. Now, in the way that Scrum does so is the fact that Scrum does no more than establish some sort of boundaries within which people actually can show that they're agile, because Scrum doesn't tell people how to act at what point of the day, at what point time of the sprint, who should be doing what. Scrum doesn't have all of those, let's say, detailed prescriptions and instructions. Scrum just creates a framework with a lot of reminders, at least for people to not forget to regularly inspect, see where we stand, make some observations based on reality, of reality, and then just don't forget to potentially adapt. Scrum doesn't say how to adapt in what sense, but Scrum just gives you a frame. So Scrum puts a little bit of a frame, a little bit of a structure around that natural agility of people to adapt. And that's cool. And thanks to COVID, I'm not just able to get in touch with people across the world, like via this meetup and other meetups and so on. I just told Stuart in the little opening of the session of the day that I just counted that I've been in over 20 online webinars since May or June, I believe. That's quite a lot, still 10 to go. So that's really cool. But COVID, in seeing a lot of my assignments and classes being cancelled, certainly in the first 3-4 months of the COVID thing, just allowed me also to do some other stuff. And one of them was writing a paper, which I call Moving Your Scrum Downfield. And in that paper, sort of what drove me in that was sort of my definition of Scrum, my most current definition of Scrum. You know, life is about creating yourself. It's also about recreating your definition of Scrum regularly. Trying to capture more what you mean. And the one you see on the bottom is I'm using currently defining Scrum, describing Scrum as a simple framework that enables people to derive value from complex challenges. It's sort of on the edge of being too complicated, I feel, my definition, but still. It has at least 4 important elements for me that are sort of crucial and essential in how I see Scrum. First of all, obviously the simplicity versus the complexity. You can't tackle complexity with complexity. I will get you into chaos. So the simple set of rules that Scrum provides is quite essential. Try to not overload or overburden that. That's one aspect or 2 aspects. And the other one is that idea of value. We are driven by creating, delivering, generating whatever value. And value is very different from volume. Volume involves this idea of utilization, capacity, thinking, and so on. That's very different. But just a side note. What I wanted to talk about here and today is the fact that it's about people. Scrum has no ambition to sort of replace the intelligence, creativity, insights, again, agility in a way of the people involved in Scrum. We can't tell people what to do at what point of time. We give them a frame. That's why it's a framework. So at the heart of Scrum are actually people. People do the work. We often do work that is also going to be consumed by people. Even leadership stakeholders might be surprised that there's people too. So it's full of people, whatever we do. And still, that natural agility of people is not being used in a lot of agile transformations, and sadly enough, also not in a lot of Scrum adoptions. So I want to talk a little bit about that more, because I feel that what I call Scrum's DNA is 2 aspects. There's a process aspect, and then there's a people aspect of Scrum. But the process aspect, it's I think one of the big achievements that we have achieved with Scrum over the past, let's say, first 20, 25 years of Scrum in the world. And the fact that we have replaced predictive old school management based upon industrial ideas, industrial recipes, waterfall thinking, and so on. We have replaced predictive management or predictive approaches with what we call in Scrum empirical approaches, meaning rather than trying to predict the actually inherently unpredictable, we've come up with this idea of regularly inspecting and adapting, which is the empirical process, or what it's sometimes called empirical process control. It's a huge achievement, but still it's not enough, because Scrum is not just about empiricism or empirical process control. Scrum has a frame where people do inspection adaptation in a self-organizing way. So that people aspect for me is represented in that self-organization part of Scrum's DNA. And I see that a lot of companies still struggle with that, because the process part, it's sort of like a cold part, it's a neutral part more. People are getting that. Yes, setting up meetings, organizing working sprints and so on. It's the advantages of not trying to predict everything and just thrive on inspection adaptation. That we're getting there, and companies are getting it. But the fact that it's about people, self-organizing people that gel or maybe not gel, human beings, that seems to be still very difficult. So that aspect of Scrum, I think, and I hope that let's say I started out with Scrum back in 2003. It's like this period 17 years ago, imagine. I hope I can see all you guys again in 17 years. I hope I'm still alive by then, but you never know. Got a long beard, so I'm quite old. And that we can say, oh my God, see what we have achieved with Scrum. Not just process part, not just product development, but also the people part and also people development. So I would hope so. Now, there are clear indications that we need to focus on the people aspect a lot more, and a lot more than on just the process aspect. These are statistics, figures, results from a survey by the Gallup Institute, institute in the US. They every so many years they do a survey around the world, asking for people's engagement with employees, so let's say the staff of companies. And the last result is this one from 2017. It was published, capturing data from 2014 until 2016. And that was sort of a confirmation of before, slight improvement, I believe, but no more than just a couple of percent. And that's sort of scary, because that survey says that around the world, on average, only 15% of the workforce say that they're really engaged for their companies. Engaged meaning going for the company, going the extra mile, believing in the company, being inspired almost by the company, truly just being engaged. In Scrum terms, you could call that commitment or being committed. Now, I like the term engagement slightly more, by the way. That is scary. You can look up your own region, but still I live in Belgium, Antwerp, which is Western Europe. So far, the UK, Bath, Bristol are still also Western Europe. You never know when you want to split off and become your own continent or region. You never know what's going to happen. But at least in the meantime, it's still Western Europe. In Western Europe, it's even worse. It's only 10%. Now, US and so on, it's better. But even in, let's say, the better regions, only about 30% of people saying that they really engage, meaning that on average 85%, in our region 90%, but even in the US, Canada, still 70% of people saying that they're either not engaged, sort of couldn't care less attitude with regards to work, probably coming to work, watching their watch a lot of the times during the day, hoping to go home and finally do something that they really want to do, that they believe in, that they feel inspired by, whatever. So that's not engaged. But there's also a lot of people that indicate that they're actively disengaged. I call that sort of being negatively engaged. That is scary. That is people saying, yeah, well, it's not just I don't believe in the company, but I'm on the edge and even beyond the edge of working against the company, working against my colleagues, fighting my colleagues, going for politics, undoing the work of the positively engaged people. That is scary. That is scary. Imagine out of a company, from a company of 1,000 people, 850 people out of 1,000 saying that they're either not engaged or even actively disengaged. That is scary. And that's also a, let's say, huge potential at least to address. So that's why we need to focus on the people aspect to increase engagement and commitment. Now, it has an effect on in our world, we are called knowledge workers because we do creative work. We need our brains to do our work. It's cognitive, it's collaborative work also. Now, in the survey, knowledge workers are also not just our work, but also doctors in the medical world, professors, teachers, lawyers, and so on. So it's not just us. It seems that overall engagement of knowledge workers is slightly higher. So it's not on average 15, only 15%, but it's up to 25 to 30%. But even then, still 75% of people not being engaged. And then it shouldn't be a surprise that a lot of those people, knowledge workers, would rather not just leave their company, but even leave the country or the region and move elsewhere, where they can find a job, something they believe in, a company they believe in. Just again, there's a need to focus on the people aspect. There's certainly also a need to focus on the people aspect in our types of work, cognitive, creative, complex work. Well, it's scary. Now, you might think that it would look better for people that we would call in a management position. Now, this is from research by the Boston Consulting Group, so the BCG. It's not that long ago. It's a lot smaller than the other survey. To be honest, it's only 5 countries in Western Europe and China. I don't know how they made up that selection, but still. So I'm not so much concerned about the size of the survey. Just I can relate to that. It resonates with me. It sort of connects to what I see happening in organizations, and certainly in large organizations, where even a lot of managers, people currently in a management position, say that they'd rather not be a manager anymore. And the services, 37% say that, well, you know what, I don't think in 5 or 10 years' time I still want to be a manager. Again, sort of indication of engagement, even at management level. And the people being managed, nobody aspires becoming a manager anymore. So there's something wrong with engagement and the people aspect in our organizations. Now, just to be clear, the biggest dissatisfaction for people in a management position is the fact that they are also considered as, let's say, people that just execute orders by other people. So they have to implement decisions. They don't have a say in the decisions. They have to just implement decisions, execute on them. Which is fascinating because it indicates that we have created organizations with multiple layers. And the only thing we do is go from layer to layer by imposing decisions on them. And imagine who's completely on the bottom, which is the team. So they take all of the pressure for them from the full organization. Yeah. Now, in the case of management people or people in the management position, which is not a good thing. A lot of them say, you know what, I have to do this because I want to earn a higher salary. I want to make a career. I want to make progress. And it seems the only way to do that is sort of climb the ladder, which is in a way sad in 2 ways. It's just climbing the ladder. What about becoming better at what you do and being rewarded and appreciated for that? The other aspect is also, I think everybody realizes that this is an extrinsic motivator. As you know, extrinsic motivators only work up to a certain point. I'll come back on that. Now, there's some good news too. So actually, managers say, I don't want to be a manager anymore, most of them. And other people say, I never want to become a manager. I only do it because of extrinsic motivation. Those people were also asked for, what do you think ideally a manager should do then? So here are your dissatisfactions. Cool. What's the other side? Let's say the positive side of the medal. And I hope you recognize a lot of those things, because we've got a way to help people do that. because it's about building teams, helping teams develop themselves, helping people develop themselves, eliminate obstacles, set clear goals, so work with goals and objectives rather than maybe tasks or instructions, and rather than having to implement decisions, make decisions, or at least be involved in making decisions, which by the way is a great way to increase commitment or engagement. Aren't we all the most committed over the decisions that we're involved in, rather than the ones imposed on us? That's just an excuse to say, hey, not my decision. So if it works out, fine. If it doesn't, not my decision. So let's move for that. Because I hope you recognize this, that the top 5 abilities of the ideal manager, maybe not really good idea to try to get them into one manager, but we actually have let's say, solutions for that. We have a way to implement those ideal management activities in a way. It's called the roles or the accountabilities that we have in Scrum. Yeah? Let me elaborate a little bit on that. Now, again, this is from that paper I wrote, Moving Your Scrum Downfield. I've done a really nasty thing in that paper. I've sort of renamed what is now called development team to in my paper to Scrum team. So don't be confused. It's what Scrum now calls development team. I just wanted to rename that because I see and I meet a lot of people that are doing Scrum in non-software development, non-product development, not in new product development, let's say in a total different world. And the term development doesn't really resonate with them. So I went out looking for one generic term that would cover it all. I didn't find that. And then I thought, well, you know what? The analogy of Scrum, I think everybody knows that. The new product development came 1986, where we get the name Scrum from, referring to a team sports like rugby. And I was like, yeah, you know what? The team on the field, the team on the pitch, self-organizing within the boundaries, following the rules and so on. It's sort of the sports, like you would call that a soccer team, a football team, a rugby team, a basketball team, and so on. So let's, for now, at least for myself, call them Scrum team. We'll see what happens. But at least we've got a Scrum team or a development team currently. They manage themselves. They manage their own work in sprints, so within the boundaries of Scrum, meaning organizing themselves in sprints, manage themselves throughout the sprint via daily Scrum, updates on sprint backlog, and so on, against the complex challenge of creating done increments with a group of skilled people. So they manage themselves. So they don't need external instructions for that. Yeah, and it's one of the aspects of moving authority down the line, because it seems that a lot of existing managers actually they're probably not really consciously aware of it, but they're saying, hey, Scrum has a great way to implement management, ideally. Not in one person, but at least in a combination of accountabilities. Because we've got a product owner in Scrum, setting objectives, thinking in terms of goals and objectives for the product goals then, hopefully driving forward decisions from a product vision. So not just some wild ideas, but be driven by a product vision. In a way, we've got somebody to manage via the product. It's a peer accountability, so the product owner does not own the development team. But that's at least a couple of aspects of that ideal manager. And the last part is the Scrum Master. Literally eliminating obstacles. We call that removing impediments. Helping people develop, facilitating people in their development, in their well-being, potentially even. Making sure that people understand the rules so that in a way the boundaries are protected. So we've got all of that ideal management activities. We've got a solution for that. It is happening by moving authority down the line. It's not what a lot of companies do. I know quite some, let's say, what we typically call middle managers that I think would be really, really great product owners or really, really great Scrum Masters. I know even some that wouldn't mind going back to doing sort of what we call development with all of the multidisciplinary aspects of that. But why don't they do that? Because of the salary, the career path. It would feel like a demotion rather than a sort of promotion, where it might actually appeal to what they love to do. And even beyond what we call those 3 accountabilities, they will get to work together because there are 3 peer accountabilities. Nobody owns any of the other accountabilities. Nobody's the sort of boss of the other ones. It's also not needed, because if you look at the 5 ideal traits of the ideal manager, you don't actually need that. So by collaborating amongst themselves, they will also not just develop new relationships amongst themselves, but also with what we call stakeholders, people within the organization with a vetted interest in the product and in the development, in the progress, that can give feedback, that can share ideas, that might bring in ideas of what's happening on the market or in the market with competition and so on. That maybe are involved in setting strategies and strategic directions for the company. Again, it's sort of not necessarily hierarchical. It's just providing certain types of input for the Scrum team, and obviously working with consumers. So all those ideal management traits, we've got an answer for that with Scrum. Might not be easy, but it's quite important, and it's even, I think, has a potential of being quite impressive. So the conclusion overall, and this is not based upon that survey by the Boston Consulting Group, something I wrote, I think in 2015 already. Oh my God, I'm really old. In 2015, describing those accountabilities, the way I've explained them now, peer accountabilities working together, where leadership sort of moves around in a way, where management is not something that one person or hierarchical people do. It's part of, a lot of people do management, because in Scrum, all those accountabilities are about managing certain aspects of the work. And by having those accountabilities collaborate and manage together, you've got a very different sort of, let's say, power structure. Yeah? And it's called, it's an old statement, old phrase I sort of dug up somewhere, that I think, oh yeah, the time is right to get it up again. And it's called moving authority down the line. It's not saying not authority, but it's authority like Scrum Master from leadership, servant leadership things. So really cool. So we've got an idea on actually how to manage work, but our organizations would look very differently. And I'd like to invite you, I'm not going to stick to this too long, just I'd like to invite you to think about it. Just think what I call ecosystem. What about using Scrum to build an ecosystem around valuable product, which is based upon conventions, accountabilities, peer accountabilities, people working together, applying tools, and so on. Doesn't mean that everybody has to work in a Scrum team, but be part of the ecosystem. And that then would be on moving authority down the line. So think about it. And if I would follow the ideas of the new product development game, so that 1986 paper that you see there, if you haven't read it, please look it up somewhere. It's a beautiful paper. It's where we got the name Scrum from, like I said earlier on. And they've already described in that paper, to sort of get more out of new product development. It means that in what I call the product hub, they didn't call it like that, but it means that what I call a product hub would operate like a startup. Yeah? They would set the hub within the set, hub people would set their own agenda, take their own initiatives against objectives, against goals, around difficult challenges. And then management or leadership, as whatever you want to call it, would act as an investor. In the paper, they call it a venture capitalist, but it sounds a little bit aggressive, if I can say so, but acting like an investor or potentially a venture capitalist, meaning providing money, guidance, support, moral support, but not intervening on a daily basis. So already in the new product development game, 1986, they said, to get more out of something that we now call Scrum, you would need a different management style, a different management culture. They didn't say how it is, but at least those are main topics. So that's, for me, very important. And it sort of puts people at the heart of what we do. And just as a reminder for everybody, people are not resources. So don't call people resources. Resources are things you can reuse. Robots, cogs, replace all pieces of machinery. People are people, human beings with emotions, personalities, a personal life, things that you can't leave at the door when you enter the office. You take that all with you. So people are not resources. I always use the analogy of saying a team of people is not like a machine in which you can take one machine part out and replace it with another machine part of sort of the same dimensions and the same size or weight. You can have two individuals with the same CV, same education, same training, same technical skills almost, and still they can be very different people to work with, and they will probably be. So people are people, not replaceable pieces of machinery, not resources. So just think about it, and because that's really important, because like people are at the start and the end of everything we do. And then think about, okay, engagement of people. What would make people feel valued within the organization? Because from feeling valued, I'm assuming you would engage. You would, if you would feel valued, you would probably do more than just sit around waiting for things to happen. So, and what a lot of companies do, I don't know whether you recognize this. I'm going to guess a lot of people do that thing called yearly performance reviews. I think the last time I had to go through a yearly performance review was, I believe, by the end of 2010. I was working at a large consulting company, and it's still a trauma. I'm still not over it. It's almost 10 years ago, and I'm still not over it. Why? Because it was like most reviews is, if I look around and hear around, first of all, it did not motivate me. It was more like humiliate me. And so what I'm going to show now is, after that review, I started thinking about this a lot, and I started making little notes and so on. That's 10 years ago. It's first time I'm so of these months is the first time I've been using that thing publicly, let's say. What I felt in most companies, I just often felt just intoxicated with the politics, the backstabbing, the politics, the elbows, the whatever, knives in the back and so on. It's scary. So it often I just felt intoxicated. That also happened with yearly performance review. I've maybe sometimes felt like tolerated. Me, okay, I was just happy that I could be around. That's sort of it. Maybe even now and then felt appreciated for what I was doing, but I've hardly ever felt really motivated to do things. So certainly techniques, processes or procedures, whatever, HR wise, human resources, which is a sort of beautiful contradiction. No, not so beautiful actually, because humans are not resources. Um, all those things you have in place have hardly ever made me feel valued, let alone engaged me to do stuff or increased my commitment. So, and then it made me think also, what as a person, when would I feel good at work? And then when would I feel motivated? And I came up with this idea, that sort of triangle. Say, well, no, if I can do something that I really like to do, that I have an interest in, so where my interests lie, and I feel I have either the talent for that, or I'm giving the means to develop my talent for that and grow and increase my competence over there. And it's in a domain that really attracts me. That maybe sometimes that might be, I don't know, for some people that would be financial services, the banking sector, the insurance sector, other people maybe e-com, web types of things. You name it, there's so much you can do. But in that combination, I think that would emerge some idea of valuation. Wow, I'm doing something I really like to do, I'm interested in. I feel I either have the talent or am guided in developing or increasing my talent. And it's in the sort of broader context that I really enjoy being in. And that would hopefully help me more. And then again, like going back to the idea of a yearly performance review, once a year, getting some sort of judgment called out of you, some sort of assessment, which is often a total surprise for most people, and most often a negative surprise. It's not motivating. So throw away yearly performance reviews and think about another way to work with people, and think about how valued do people feel. Maybe help them introspect for that, and in that sense, retrospect also for that. How often do you want to do that? Can you match that? Is it something you want to do? Do you feel you have the talent for that? How can we help you in that? Is it sort of broader domain that you want to do? And if not, how can we help you maybe go there? And if in the end, remember my little quote, life is about creating yourself. We are not trees, we can walk, move to a place where maybe you have higher chances of finding this. And how often do you want to do this? I think the sprint retrospective in Scrum is also a tool potentially to talk about those things, help each other out at a peer level, meaning again moving authority down the line. How often do you want to do that? How often do you want to check in how to deal with that? I don't have a silver bullet type answer. I only know that our current procedures and processes are really not working to increase engagement of people, as by the way is shown in that survey. So it doesn't really motivate people. Now about motivation of people. So again, working as people, the feeling of valuation, what makes people valued, feel valued, interest, domains, and talents as well. Let's think about also what motivates people. So I already gave the example of people currently in a management position. They're mostly driven by their position, maybe the fact that they have a fancy car, I don't know, a higher salary than other people, climbing the ladder, status feeling. That's all fine. And I don't know who knows about the book that Daniel Pink wrote. I think it's about 10 years ago. Daniel Pink wrote a little book, it's called Drive, the sort of surprising truth to what motivates us as people, as human beings. And Daniel Pink said, and that's a huge misunderstanding, Daniel Pink did not say that money was not important. Daniel Pink said that money is important, and it's always important in simple mechanical work, which I hope you all agree that it's not what we do. Yeah. So in our work, cognitive, complex, creative work that requires intelligence of people and creative insights, money is important, but only up to a certain point. Beyond that point, and that's the danger in managers only being managers because of money or other forms of extrinsic motivation. Beyond a certain point, it becomes toxic. It becomes an addiction. You want the same thing again next year without doing the same effort again. So it becomes sort of very sad, but also addictive, and it creates toxic environments. So the point where that sort of transition in a way happens is the fact that you don't think about money anymore. So you're paid well enough so that you don't care about, you're not concerned, you're not concerned about money anymore. What they call the matter of money is off the table, meaning you're focusing on your work again, maybe on your colleagues, what you do, your feeling of valuation, rather than being concerned about money and income all the time. Meaning you can, I don't know, pay your car, you can feed your family, pay your house, have no concerns, take a yearly holiday, just things like that. Money is not really a matter of concern anymore. Beyond that point, what Daniel Pink described as what truly motivates people, and that sort of intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic motivation is what Daniel Pink called autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Now, in creating the book that Stuart also referred to, the 97 things every Scrum practitioner should know, I've worked with a couple of people that are also in neuroscience and human sciences and so on, anthropology, and so really great. Love to work with those people. So I've been talking with them about the idea of Daniel Pink, and guy that's actually quite active in neuroscience. So he's combining Scrum with neuroscience a lot. He said, you know what, Daniel Pink is a little bit oversimplistic. Not to say it's wrong, it is actually right, but it's not just autonomy, mastery, and purpose. First of all, he said, and I've been talking with him, let's not call it mastery, but more like competence, the feeling of being good at something, that sort of importance feeling that comes out of that, and relatedness rather than just purpose, meaning the feeling of belonging to something and delivering a contribution. And beyond that, I talked with him and said, well, let's add a couple of aspects to what makes people feel motivated. That's also the feeling of certainty and fairness, being fairly paid, again, fairly compared to your colleagues, your teammates, compared to in general the market and so on, feeling that you're fairly being paid for the efforts that you're doing, and that idea of certainty. Let me give an anti-example of certainty that a lot of companies, certainly large companies, regularly go through large layoff rounds. If it's like 10-15% of the workforce is being fired because we're now introducing Scrum, we're becoming agile, whatever, and then suddenly a lot of people, teams can be fired. That creates a culture of fear and uncertainty. So even the people that are not involved or not part of some sort of layoff round, they suddenly don't get that feeling of certainty. They worry about their work. They worry about the fact, am I going to be in the next round or not? So that doesn't create that sort of certainty that people look for. Yeah. So when working with people, as a Scrum Master and other people at the retrospective from an HR perspective, that those are the things that we should take into account. The different aspects of management, the fact that it's people, the fact that it's the feeling of valuation count, what motivates us. How can we create an environment in which people find that intrinsic motivation again? And not to go for extrinsic motivators all the time, because they will become toxic. So just some things to think about. Now that autonomy and even mastery annex competence part of Daniel Pink's research, that again resonates with me in terms of Scrum. Because like I said, Scrum's DNA, empiricism and self-organization. Now the self-organization aspect of Scrum, underused, under-highlighted, underemphasized, scary thing, whatever. No, can't trust people. Well, that wouldn't make people feel valued, right? Continuously having that sort of sense of distrust over them. Now, the self-organization part, sort of definition, the great thing is I've got a lot of, I think, English-speaking people in the session. I'm from Belgium. We have three, like Wim is also from Belgium. We have three official languages. So in the northern part, we speak Dutch. Southern part, we speak French. There's a little part that speaks German also. The way we overcome that is by adopting a fourth language. So that's English then. So in order to avoid sort of linguistic problems, we adopt a fourth language. Still, English is not my mother tongue. But I do know that the dictionary says self-organization, never heard of. So the Oxford Dictionary says self-organization as a term doesn't exist. To self-organize, that does exist. That is an existing verb in English. It's fascinating. So we've been using that for a long time. So what I would call self-organization is then the definition of that in Scrum terms. It's the process of people, again, it's people forming organized groups around problems or challenges without external work plans or instructions being imposed on them. Sort of the essence of self-organization. So Scrum doesn't impose instructions on people. Scrum asks people, and that's a way to augment self-organization and get more out of it. We create some boundaries within which self-organization happens. And this is for me self-organization. People are given difficult, complex challenges, often in very complex circumstances. And rather than telling them what to do, that's impossible with complex challenges. You want a collective of skills and talents to work together around the problem. The frame that Scrum creates is some sort of minimum boundaries to work in sprints. Create deliverable, releasable increments of product. That sort of gives direction. Yeah, but it's not an instruction. And that's for me very important. And sort of the minimal, and because self-organization as that word is not defined in the dictionary, I think that's a good thing so that we can sort of give meaning to that ourselves. Scrum thrives a lot on what we call self-organizing teams. Now, self-organizing means at least minimally not being manager-led or being in a manager-led situation, meaning not one central manager, not even Scrum Master, not even product owner, certainly not a project lead or a PMO, whatever, telling people what to do on a daily basis. No, we stay out of a sprint, like was said in the new product development game with management and leadership. That goes for anybody external to a team. We leave the team alone. We don't intervene in sprints. It's only most teams nowadays seem to be doing sprints of 2 weeks. So stay out. Leave them alone, leave them work. If they need help, they will ask. So just stay out. Sort of minimal level of self-organization, which I call self-managing teams, meaning teams completely managing their own sprints and demonstrating accountability by realigning with each other on a daily basis, replanning the work against the goal of achieving the sprint goal, trying to create a forecast, potentially even more, potentially less, and openly show what they've done and then ask feedback for that by the end of the sprint. Self-managing teams. Now, if you have teams, a collection of people with skills and talents and creative insights and cognitive capabilities that are able to do that, then those teams can also what I call self-designing, meaning they can decide for themselves what sort of skills and expertise they need on the team, what sort of skills and expertise they no longer need on the team, or not that much or less. Yeah. Now it's a lot based on experience. In all of my years of Scrum, I've seen some teams really grow and grow in terms of performance, but then performance that emerged from a state of high collaborativeness. Meaning, I prefer highly collaborative teams over high performing teams because I know that highly collaborative teams will perform. So I focus on the collaboration rather than on the performance. And I've met and I've worked with quite some highly collaborative teams, and I regret to say that in most organizations, most of those teams just plummeted again. They went down again in terms of motivation, and it was a lot to do with the fact that external people, resource people, project managers, the PMO, whatever, thought that they knew better who should be working in what team at what point of time or what project and so on. And you've got this team gelling, working together, connecting with each other, even at a personal level, sharing personal stories and so on, really being on performing and really becoming a what we call a complex adaptive system, meaning producing results that you cannot relate back to one of the elements or one of the actors in the team. They do great stuff. And then other people come in saying, yeah, but we want to replace your product owner. Oh, you need a different Scrum Master. Oh, the Scrum Master now also has to be part of the development team rather than being a full-time Scrum Master, because, this idea of self-organization and replacing people from the team and putting in new people and so on. And then gone is the idea of motivation, because that sort of not self-designing. And then maybe you can use your imagination to think beyond that. So think about self-organization. It relates to the mastery or the competence aspect of the NLP. It certainly relates to the autonomy aspect. People organizing their own work life. And it might even go to deciding what sort of team you want to be part of, in what sort of domain, with what sort of skills and talents. And how about helping people figure that out for themselves? And rather than HR or whatever other people telling people what to do, giving them instructions, what about facilitating them, helping them, coaching them towards finding a better role, position, whatever place within the organization? Yeah, but just to be clear, this is all about Scrum, self-organizing teams. Yeah? And Scrum just tries to build on that. So Scrum, in that people aspect, combined with empiricism, self-organization with empiricism, tries to actually do that. But as you can see in the low levels of engagement, we've got a lot of room for improvement. 85% of the workforce is not really engaged or even actively disengaged. Now, the good news is that there is hope, because the Gallup Institute has done also research to compare companies with a high level of engagement and compare them with companies with a really low level of engagement. And they found sort of remarkable differences, meaning that talking in terms of outcomes, even at the level of the business and customer outcomes, meaning productivity, sales metrics, market share, usage metrics of your products and your product portfolios and so on, really great. Those companies performed a lot better. So there is value in focusing on the engagement of your people. And there's also value, it speaks for itself, I hope, also value for the people themselves. which is quite important, I believe, because the turnover was a lot less people leaving the company all the time, not just leaving the company, but also like we saw leaving, maybe even leaving the country, of leaving the region. Absenteeism was lower, sickness, illness, long-term illness lower, burnouts, depressions, the things that I think a lot of organizations suffer from, people burning out. That was all a lot lower. It's obvious with high levels of engagement. But again, it's not that easy because even that self-organizing aspect of Scrum is underused so much. Although that would create an environment where people can engage again, where they can be inspired and hopefully love what they do. And if they don't love what they do, maybe move elsewhere, which is a valid thing to do. So focusing on engagement is actually really useful. Now, if you would think of business outcomes, customer outcomes, and employee outcomes, from those three, the only one that has that huge room for improvement is obviously engagement, employee outcomes. 85%. 85% of the workforce is not really engaged. I bet no other metric or indicator has the same room for improvement. So my challenge for some people and organizations is, what if you, by all means, keep measuring business and customer outcomes, but for now, focus only on engagement of people, valuation of people, what motivates people. Focus completely on that and do nothing but rethink, re-emerge processes, procedures, whatever, just for that reason. And as a gift, you will have a lot higher business and customer outcomes. We are focusing on the wrong aspects. We are so obsessed with money, business outcomes, customer outcomes, and so on, that we forget that we actually create very unhappy employees. So we're focusing on the wrong aspects, because in the end, things sounds obvious, right? Sort of what I derived from that paper, employees who are engaged actually care a lot more. I like that quote because it reflects a little bit how I care as a caretaker, caring about Scrum, caring about people. Engaged people care more. And not just about customer and enterprise outcomes, but also about team outcomes, which is important. So the value of our work is not just value with Scrum, deriving value from complex challenges, my definition of Scrum. That idea of deriving value is not just in terms of customer and business or enterprise outcomes, but also in terms of team outcomes. Yeah, and we've got a beautiful instrument for that. Every retrospective, every 2 weeks, we can talk about it. You might have a Scrum Master helping you with that, potentially a facilitator or supported by HR and so on. Yeah, but it requires a very different way of thinking about our organizations. Yeah, and that sort of last concern I have with all this thing called Agile transformations. Again, for me, a lot of them don't start and end with people. They're imposing processes again on people. One of the silliest things I've seen, and it happens across the world, is that an organization decides that all teams have to work on the same sprint length of 2 weeks. Nobody knows why. It's in every part of the organization, regardless of the domain, the business, the complexity, the technology. No, everybody has to work on 2 week sprints. Like, wow, that's really a great way to industrialize your Scrum to death. It's not open, it's not context driven. You can all do Scrum. Everybody knows what a sprint is, but in one product hub, what I call the product hub, you could do sprints maybe of 4 weeks, while in another one you could do 2 weeks. It's Scrum, everybody's doing Scrum, but you don't industrialize it to death. And that industrialization, again, is that sort of lack of room for people to devise and create their own solutions, their own way of working, which actually Scrum allows to do. Yeah, and another aspect with all those Agile transformations, and sort of connected to that, is that they're way too, what I call, too explicit. Change projects, driven, imposed, full of instructions, forceful, driving people to unified, classes and adopt unified practices like 2 week sprints and so on. It's very explicit. It's like a change project that's being run. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? You can't change how people work with a separate change project. It's not a transformation if it doesn't change how you actually work. And not just tells you how to work differently. No, no, it should be almost driven from on the work floor. Again, with retrospective, maybe even sprint reviews, but it should change how we work. And we should be facilitated for that. And it should, in an agile sense, it should be simplifying how we work. You know, rethink the way you work, why you do the stuff, or based upon the why you do stuff, and then go for the simplest thing that might possibly work. Which is one of my most favorite sentences from it's all the agile things. The simplest thing that might possibly work. So try to look through all the difficult, complicated constructions that exist and rethink how you can do that in let's say in an agile way, in an agile work, which is not an industrial work, which is not treating people like resources, but treating people as people. Yeah. So it's not this, and again, to come back on the topic engagement, it is not an agile transformation with Scrum if it doesn't engage people. You can enforce the Scrum process on people. You can make them do sprint plannings, and you can make them stand up every day, and they might not know why they're actually doing it. It doesn't engage them. They don't care. They're not connected. It doesn't feel like relatedness, that purpose idea, and then it doesn't help. You could also just stop doing Scrum, or even worse, keep intervening on a daily basis, which sort of drives people's motivation down the drain, let's say. Yeah. So it's not Scrum if it doesn't engage people. And those are for me ways to look at the agile transformation. Make it implicit rather than explicit. Make it in a way around people again. And one of the biggest impediments I see in all that thing is that, and that's again related to that idea, the people aspect of Scrum. Okay, the process aspect of Scrum, people are getting that. People see management, leadership, organizations see the advantage, but there's still a lot of lack of courage to really go for self-organization. It's only in sprints. Only in 2 or 3 weeks time. What can go wrong? You can lose the sprint. So what? Yeah. But we seem to be very obsessed still with trying to control individuals. That's why sprint reviews are about velocity, tasks, your estimates, justifying what happened in the sprint, justifying for what you did in the sprint, because we try to control individual. It's why management looks into, I don't know, whatever you use, Jira, TFS, whatever. It's why management, leadership, even product owners look at your sprint backlog or your sprint burnout chart or your Scrum board in your tool on a daily basis. It's not their concern. It's not their business. You're a self-managing team. You want to thrive on self-organization. Get your Scrum Master to remove the access to those systems. It's not their concern. What you want stakeholders and leadership to do and sort of get control. Control is not a dirty word. In the way that you try to control individuals is try to get control out of the boundaries of Scrum, being invited to the sprint review, share feedback with the team, come have a look with the team at, oh, how much value, potential value did you as a team, which is the unit, not people, not individuals, how much value did you potentially create? Because that's the purpose of Scrum, deriving value from complex challenges. But as long as we have this ingrained obsession with wanting to control individuals, ask them to justify for their tasks, their estimates, and so on, it's never really going to happen. We will never get over that culture and that atmosphere of fear rather than trust and feeling valued. How can you feel valued if somebody is breathing down your neck all day long? You wouldn't. So in very short, the management shift that we're looking for, and that has to do with that people aspect, is stop managing for tasks and individual performance, and not even go for team performance. No, go look for a bounded environment, set up, foster, create, develop, help developing a bounded environment, meaning environment with boundaries. Self-organization is not anarchy. A bounded environment for people to engage, where people feel valued, motivated, where people come to work because of the work, not because of their paycheck by the end of the month. Yeah? And so that people find that intrinsic motivation again. And as a gift, again, you will get better business and customer and consumer outcomes. I know it sounds like we have a long way to go, but again, and then hopefully by some sort of implicit agile transformation over time, you reform the organization towards a network structure of product hubs, ecosystems that in themselves are part of a bigger ecosystem with operating startup management and so on. And again, like I showed in one slide, leadership being a distributed quality instead of just being some people making a lot of noise, being very assertive and dominant over other people. And so my belief of a future and the future of agile organizations. So I want to thank you very much. I have no idea, haven't been minding the clock too much. Stuart gave me too much time probably. So thank you very much for being here. Keep learning, keep improving. Don't sit around for things waiting to happen. If you feel there's some valuable ideas in what I shared, which would be cool, try to do something with it. Don't wait for people around you to get it and change.
Okay, thank you, Gunther. That was, from my perspective anyway, excellent oversight on the human side. As I said, certainly one of my key and very close to my heart aspects of Scrum. There's been a lot of good chat, a lot of good comments on the chat as well. So showing everybody on this session has been engaged, a lot of things to learn. And yeah, no, I'm got certain things that I'm going to take away both from the talk and from the comments on the chat as well. So a big thank you to Gunther for turning up and giving us his time and energy and knowledge in order to help us on our agile journeys. And a special mention to a few people. I think it was Tom and Cheryl who joined us from the US. Johan, I think, wins the distance award from South Africa, and Ravi gets the late night award from Bangalore. So continuing to reach all parts of the world. So thanks to you guys for all joining. And as I said, a final big thank you for Gunther for giving us his time, knowledge, and experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you everybody for listening. So hope to see you again somewhere.
Yeah, no, definitely good when we get back to out of COVID pandemic experience, and we can start getting some more face-to-face stuff together, which I think we'd all be looking forward to.
Yeah, post-COVID times sounds like some gigantic fantasy world somewhere far away in the future.
Yeah, with beer attached.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So thank you all very much for listening. I hope it helped you a little bit. I hope it also helped you get a little bit of a different perspective on Scrum rather than the process aspect. So I'll try to get that across to your managers and leadership.
Yeah, and I think you've given us a record as well, Gunther. I think we were just under 60, and I think that's the most we've had, certainly since I've been more recently involved. It's the most we've had on one of these sessions yet. So a lot of interest, and I think a lot of well-informed people now going off and taking a lot from this.
Yeah, well, last week I gave sort of the same talk, but in a shorter time, with less material in Belgium. And there was a guy in the session, by the way, just for everybody, from Belgium, who wanted to be a Scrum Master. He's been in my class recently. He's been very involved with Scrum, but never got the opportunity to really be a Scrum Master. And he said, you know what, Gunther, I'm now 2 months of a Scrum Master. And one of the most beautiful things his team had been saying is that the fact that it was all felt so more humane now, the work environment. So the idea of sprints is to also keep a sustainable pace. It doesn't make sense to now use sprints and still burn out people. Makes no sense. I know the term sprints might sound misleading, but make sure that you keep it sustainable across all of your sprints, not just in one sprint. And you can, like a sprint, you can really run, and then once you cross the line, you just drop dead. It's not really the idea of a sprint in Scrum. The word sprint should evoke some sort of sense of focus, a focused effort. So think about it.
Yeah, and it's understanding the people, understanding the individuals, and everybody as a team. What makes people tick? What motivates them specifically? Because it's all different. Knowing the individuals and learning about them, getting them to learn about you.
Yeah, and that's certainly for Scrum Masters, but not just for Scrum Masters. But certainly Scrum Masters, it's working with people. In Scrum Masters have nothing to do with budget, scope, and so on. Yes, remove impediments, also help people engage, help them understand the rules better, help them restore the purpose of the events, and so on. But again, and then what I just talked about, understand what it is that motivates people. I think it will help people become a better Scrum Master.
Yeah.
Although it might not be the organizational expectation of what the Scrum Master does, by the way. But
yeah, there's a lot of people who bring Agile in, or companies who bring on Agile in, just focus on the high level rules, what they're supposed to do. But as I said, I think a key point there was it's not just the Scrum Master's responsibility; it's everybody's responsibility to understand the different personalities and the different individuals within the team and how you work best together. I can't remember who it was. Somebody on the chat popped up, mentioned the liberating structures question of, what do I need from you as a team? So bringing that out, bringing the individuals, what does each team member need from everybody else? And again, and building that up as part of your collaboration.
Yeah, I've done a number of sessions earlier on this year also about engagement being the key, which was sort of before this session, based on that same survey, and then focus on engagement a lot. And that what you just said, Stuart, reminds me a little bit of what I said. You know what? Sprint reviews should first of all start with the question, how much potential value have you as a team created this sprint? Because it's about the team, it's about the sprint, it's about value. So it's not about a collection of individuals, it's not about tasks and estimates, it's about the team, sprint, and value. And then even then the sprint review should hopefully evolve towards the question, okay, what can we do as stakeholders, leadership, whatever, what can we do to help you as a team increase your ability to deliver even more value in the next couple of sprints? In terms of, do you need trainees? Do you have access to all systems? Do you have all the skills in the team? So, and that's what your question just brought up. So that should be at the heart of the sprint review. Team value sprint, and what can we do to help you more? What is important? What are insights you need? What are possible impediments you have? What are things that are on your wish list of done that you can't actually do? Just things like that. That's a very different review, I believe. And that's sort of the same question, Stuart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's obviously value also in becoming a better team.
Yeah, and like I said, becoming a better team, meaning increasing engagement, hopefully should, as shown in research, result in better outcomes for the business, for the company, because people who are engaged actually care more.
Yeah, and the more you understand about the individuals, even outside the work environment, the more you understand. I think Kerry mentioned it on the chat as well, that understanding people's home lives, not too personally, but understanding their circumstances that may have an impact on how they're working in the office or in the work environment, or how they're behaving. And understanding that allows you to give more empathy and more understanding. Yeah. And allows all team members to show that.
Yeah, and Kat, you posted something in the chat saying that you just started with a newly formed team where people are sort of all over the place. And that, again, that relates to that idea that I called self-designing teams, because that is a way to express the idea that you want to have dedicated teams. You want to have teams that are dedicated to the product. Again, that starts again with the idea of knowing your product, because a lot of companies that I know, they start up Scrum teams and they end up with like sort of micro teams in silos and the departments, existing structures of the organization. And nobody's sort of what I call mining the synergies across teams. And that is often the product. That means work still has to be handed over from one team to another team or to another department. And the end result, who's mining the end result? And then having dedicated teams, being dedicated to the product, that sort of connects to that idea of self-designing. Because if nobody says who should be working at what team or what project or what service at what point of time, that means we accept the fact that dedicated teams are better. And again, from systems thinking, there are beautiful data and figures for that. And they show that, it has to do with the fact that we're people, human beings. We have limited brains in a way. We are not fit for a lot of context switching. If your team members are continuously spread across different projects, there are data that show that have shown that for every additional project that you have to be involved in, you lose 20% of your performance, productivity, efficiency, whatever you want to call it. That means if I get to work as one person dedicated on one project or one team, and let's call it 100% efficient, then if I have to regularly spread myself across two different things, it seems from research that I lose 20% of my effectiveness, meaning per project, I still have 40% of that original 100%. And that means if you recalculate that to let's say a working week of 5 days, it means that if I regularly have to work on two projects at the same time, I lose 1 working day per week on context switching. And everybody knows that, but nobody's wishing to acknowledge that or even act upon that. Yes, Kat, go on.
Sorry, so it was my second day with the company, first day actually meeting the team, and I naively thought they were a team. And it wasn't until I think halfway through the session that I realized, oh no, this person's only here for allocated 20% of their time. And you're like, one day you're working for the squad for 1 day a sprint. Okay, this is going to be interesting. But of course, especially when you're the new girl there and you kind of, okay, I'm going to shut up and just sit here for a minute. But listening to you and talking about collaboration, talking about engagement, and I'm really hoping to understand better about the product, to understand better about what it is this company really thinks how they're going to get value out of this team with, like you said, with the context changing, with what is the purpose. So I think I've got some back end work to do my side to really understand the drives and really understand what are we doing before I start stirring.
Yeah, but often this idea of treating people as resources, that sort of industrial mindset, that also makes them think in terms of utilization. Meaning they make up a calculation of the number of hours or days per week available, and then just spread that across different projects, and then suddenly there's 20%.
That's my gut feel.
For people to live up to the, let's say, performance expectations, it would actually mean that for every week they would have to perform 1 day additionally. And that's how you end up with weekend work and night work or evening work. And then the effect of that again is low quality. And it's just because the industrial mindset and the
I was going to say, Gunther, I'm currently experiencing it in a startup. So it's common in startup environments where they just kicked off. So they've got so much to do and so many initiatives being kicked off there. People are just being allocated ad hoc to get involved in projects. And you suddenly find, I say exactly the same thing, suddenly find, actually, I've got people at maybe 20 to 30%. And it's now starting to try and educate the management in, I've already mentioned, do you understand context switching and productivity? So it's bringing up things like that. But I've got a couple of questions coming in that I'd like to ask
go ahead,
Gunther. So one of them, if you don't mind, Gunther, one says, okay, this one from Kerry. Given that the manifesto decades ago was aiming towards individuals and interactions over processes and tools, why do you think people, so managers and also many Scrum Masters, are still so afraid of taking this approach to Scrum, Agile, the whole aspect?
Because there's still something that I've called in all of those Agile transformations, organizations run or start up or whatever in Agile transformation from that sort of what I call industrial mindset. It leads to what I've called at some point in time to an illusion of agility. It looks as if they become more agile, but it's not actually true. It's because they use a lot of, they impose stuff on people. They do it like very mass production like. Again, treating people like resources. It's sort of trying to become agile, meaning it's huge. It's a leap from the industrial paradigm or mindset to the agile mindset. That is not an easy thing to do. A lot of companies are under stress and pressure of speeding up and being in danger, whatever, and they want to go too fast. And unfortunately nowadays, what is the meaning of agile? Because the term has been hijacked by so many people for so many things. Who isn't doing something with agile in front of it? I don't know, agile analysts, agile architects, agile phases, agile whatever. So that sort of is difficult thing. That's why I often want to go back to that sort of simplicity. Scrum is about people, value, and then empiricism. But it's often too simple. I know the strange thing is that a lot of those managers actually know what management should be about, that it should be about people. Even working with a lot of middle managers, I found out that they really have an interest in people, but for whatever reasons, it seems there's a culture from once you start climbing the ladder, you have to leave all of that behind you. Like you can't show emotions anymore because you're now the manager. You have to be brave and whatever all the time. You have to be big and whatever. Sort of, I don't know. Maybe it's a sort of macho culture. I don't know. But a lot of those people, if I talk with them sort of off the record, they're like gentle, emotional, and so on. But once in a group, they have to sort of keep up some sort of appearance and some sort of facade. Maybe that's also part of it.
I think part of it is trust as well, because as you said, when you get into the career, that kind of senior management, the management career ladder, people have reached that by being in control, driving things, making decisions, and now suddenly, and again, a number of managers, not saying they're all, a number of managers are career driven and want to go further, and suddenly they're being asked to effectively trust their career with other people because they get measured on their achievements and what they deliver, and if they're having to trust people who work for them to make those decisions and be self-organizing, then that's quite a big step for a lot of them.
And suddenly we ask them to sort of leave behind the sort of behavior that got them in that position.
Exactly.
Stabbing, elbows, fighting.
Sorry, Kerry, you were going to say it was your question.
There's a pretty big problem then with the term manager. Maybe we need to find a different word there. I think maybe the word manager has connotations that people then feel the need to live up to.
Yeah, I like to talk often in terms of the activity of managing, because there's a lot of managing happening. But yeah, and to be honest, I've met quite some good managers. I've also met managers like Stuart sort of described that were just interested in having line manager on their business card. Don't care where, don't care in what sort of organization, don't care in what sort of business. I want to be, and you know what, if through an agile transformation that you're truly slowly transforming the organization, I would assume that the sort of people that would decide for themselves, it's not my sort of organization anymore. So rather than telling people to leave, create a new sort of organization in which people might decide for themselves, not what I like, so I'm going to leave. And it's very different, for me, a very different attitude. I've worked with past few years with a French-Italian colleague of mine, a large French organization. And they were at the start. It's probably the only organization that sort of ever listened to some advice that I had. And I've advised them to sort of not try to transform the full organization, let's say overnight, which a lot of large organizations like to do. I advised them to do it sort of step by step, meaning project by project. So they started by identifying one product, and then let's say we set up Scrum, or we reimagined Scrum because they were actually already doing Scrum for that. We had one sponsor, one believer at management level, and then we run into a lot of problems like dedicated teams. That took my friend a couple of months of fighting with the PMO, resource management, allocations, whatever, allocation managers, to make sure that people were now dedicated to that one product alone. And that's for me, again, a proof that you have to take these things step by step by step. You can't transform a complete organization overnight. Because if you do that, you run into those problems for all teams at once. That's not manageable anymore. That's just, that would kill you. But a lot of them are like,
Part of that aspect as well as the the cultural change, changing the environment that allows people to behave in those certain ways, and the soundbite of a safe environment. But it takes one leader or one manager to say, right, even within my part of the organizations, I make it okay for people who I give authority or give autonomy to make decisions, and if they go wrong, that's fine. I'll still stand up for them. I'll cover them. It was my responsibility to make that decision and create that environment and let them grow and build them into it. But that's such a huge decision for certain managers, because that gives away control of their power, their career, and eventually money to somebody else. To somebody else.
If I can work with an organization and make it small again, there's much we can achieve. And then just give an example, a working example of that is actually possible within an organization. And it's also, but it's difficult for a lot of them to step away from a traditional organization we represent as a sort of pyramid, and then try to move what I just showed in the end, that sort of network structure of product hubs. That is not a top-down thing, that is not a bottom-up, that is a transformation that has no direction. That is like selecting a certain part within the pyramid and then collecting people around that, reforming them. That has no, that's not top down, that's not bottom up, that's not left right, that is inside out, outside in. And then by doing that in a number of spots within the organization, you slowly transform the complete organization. Because in that industrial approach that leads to that, what I call illusion of agility, that's also because a lot of organizations think that they can limit the change to the team level. So what they do, they've got all those individuals running around, and then individuals now have to be formed into teams. They all go through the same training program. They all have to follow the same practices, the same sprint length, and so on. And they are established often within the existing silos. So rather than having non-collaborative individuals, we now have non-collaborative micro teams. The improvement is quite limited, actually, because nobody's willing to reform teams often across departmental boundaries, because that would get some people into some job safety concerns. And I wouldn't feel the manager anymore, and that, no, that's my team. Your team would actually better be part of. So challenges again, trying to make it small.
Lots of challenges. Yeah. I'm going to jump in here now. I'm conscious of the time. It's now 8 o'clock, and I know Gunther, you're an hour ahead of us, so it's getting late where you are. Certainly even later where Ravi is in Bangalore. So I'm really conscious of Ravi's still on the call.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Ravi.
Yeah. So I could grab a beer and sit here and chat all night about this stuff, but I'm being conscious of the time. I think we should let Gunther go. And bring this to a close on what I thought was has been a very enjoyable evening. And as I said, I hope once COVID's on, we get to meet at some point in the future when we're all back together again.
Okay, cool. Thank you all very much. Have a, depending on where you live, a wonderful evening, a good night, or a lovely lunch maybe. Maybe some people still have to go for lunch, I don't know. Okay, thank you. And then again, Stuart, thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay. Bye-bye all.
Thanks.
If I close the session, I'm the host, right? It's going to be.
You are. You can do. You can end it all, Gunther.
Okay.